Before we get started, I just wanted to call out that at the time of this recording, Amanda wasn't full-time working with Semrush, but she's now the content and growth manager with Semrush. So congrats to her on the appointment, but also I just wanted to call out that is why I don't refer to her with that position in the introduction. All right, back to the podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the BuzzStream podcast. I'm your host, Vince Nero. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Amanda Milligan. You may know her formerly at iPull Rank. She was with Fractl. She was with Stacker. She is now the founder of Brand Authority Club. And today, I am talking to Amanda all about LLMs, LLM sources, citations, all the good stuff that, is popping off in the digital PR space and the SEO space and everywhere in between. So we're going to dig into a post that she wrote on Backlinko, but we're going to dig into a lot of other stuff as well. Before I do, I just want to remind people, subscribe, share this stuff with your colleagues. The more that you do, the more I can have great guests on like Amanda. The second quick reminder is that ListIQ is out, our media list building tool for people who are looking to build hyper relevant media lists directly from Google News. It pulls in all the information of the journalists in the SERP super quickly. You can build your media lists from that. Saves a ton of time, a ton of digging, and it's getting some great feedback. So definitely go check it out on the BuzzStream website. Amanda, how you doing? Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to. You'll find out very quickly. I can just talk and talk and talk. So a podcast is my favorite medium.
So, the reason I think I reached out to you initially was on LinkedIn. I saw this post and I was like, man, this is stuff that I've been talking about. This is clearly big in the industry right now. It's a post entitled LLM Sources Shifted 80% in 2 months. Here's why you shouldn't panic. And so I think, as I said in the intro, this kind of plays into this feeling, I think, in the industry, especially, our listeners are mainly digital PR and builders. And it's just this idea of what do we do now? We're entering this unknown. There's all these great studies coming out. And I think those are being used as kind of building blocks for different people's strategies. But there are so many changes happening. And when these changes happen, people do tend to panic. People tend to jump to the next shiny thing. They tend to, it's just upend their strategies. We're seeing more people jumping into digital PR than ever before. So, yeah, I guess I'm going to start here. Can you just give a quick synopsis of this piece, if that's okay? Just kind of a couple of the high-level takeaways so we can kind of start there.
I mean, I think what you were saying is correct in that when there's a lot of change, when there's, volatility, people tend to want to find the solution really quickly and, like you said, jump on the next shiny thing. And the SEO world, the equivalent is an algorithm update, right? Where everybody kind of will, and, sometimes it's merited, but they always are a good opportunity to pause and say, is what we're doing working? Is it going to continue to work? And I think in this case, like you're saying, LLMs overall, LLM marketing is an emerging space, right? We know some things, we're learning others. And when it comes to seeing that study from Semrush of the changes in the sources that ChatGPT was using, that's essentially what the piece was commenting on, was that, okay, going from 3 months ago, I don't remember the time period off the top of my head, but it wasn't terribly long, changed how much they were using sites like Reddit, for example. So people will see that and have this response of oh my God, everything I was doing is wrong. How do I pivot? How do I fix this? So the point of the article was to be hey, I hear that it's scary to see this, but that's not really the right approach, because what we should be doing anyway, I mean, you mentioned digital PR folks, people who are already experts in this field, who know how to get authoritative pickups, that foundation is still what matters the most. And to me, I see a drop in Reddit and a lot of us think that's not going to last. There are certain places that people trust, right? There just are. Reddit happens to be one of them, and it has been for, even in Google now, for a year, right? Because there's only so many places that consumers trust to get information these days. And so if you as a practitioner know, hey, like I know that people are going to this source and they respect it and they trust it, stick with it. Don't just because something comes out that's like, oh, right now it's a site that's not being used as much. That doesn't mean that there isn't merit to it. All of these things interplay. And really what I'm thinking about is like, where's the authority? And that's what PR is, in one aspect at least. It's where are you getting those brand mentions and those links that are demonstrating that you know what you're talking about? And LLMs they're looking for that. And they are still adapting. If anything, that's the real takeaway from seeing this kind of thing is like LLMs are changing. Nothing is static. So if we stick to what is core to what we're trying to do, like almost the common sense of it all, with some finessing on the specifics that will change, we don't have to have like this overhaul of strategy. Still, it is good to have this mentality that people have of like, I need to adapt, because we do need to, as we see things come out, change how we approach, like I said, the fine tuning, but the overall strategy is going to stay the same.
Yeah. I mean, this idea of like chasing Reddit citations, for instance, that one kind of concerns me in so much as like it's where I think you're seeing a lot of the spam stuff, like at least coming out. That's probably not entirely true, because we're also seeing a lot of stuff out of like the UK of like fake experts and all this. Like I feel like AI has just like turned back the
It's
clock to
muddled everything.
all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like all the old spam tactics are coming out, that the whole like, this is why we can't have nice things. It's like people are ruining this stuff, and there are some people doing it correctly.
Yeah.
But for every one person, there's like, 5 people trying to scam.
Yeah.
System.
No, it's funny because I'm an avid Redditor. And so I was on yesterday and I saw 2 examples of people calling out like, hey, I know you made this thread to spot, like to promote this brand. Like people are already, and that's so Reddit, right? Like they are the savviest at catching marketing. And I was honestly encouraged by that, because I was like, okay, at least the spammy stuff's not going to work. Like, I hope that they stay on that, because I'm glad you brought this up, because that's what we're talking about, like the fundamentals of PR. And it's like, let's not do the really kind of, but it always happens because there is this panic of like, we got to get in there. We got to do it now. We got to do it fast. And there are ways to do it. There are people who are doing it really well. It's not about, spamming links to your site or chiming in, and being like, I think the example I saw yesterday, I was in like women's fashion over 35 or something like that was the subreddit that I was in. And it was some post and the comment was like, we know this is trying to promote Rent the Runway, so don't even bother. Like they just were immediately like, don't bother.
Yeah.
And that ends up being a negative, right? Like, immediately I was like, oh, Rent the Runway is trying to do some sketchy stuff, and it ends up backfiring in a big way. So yeah, there is still, like, I just encourage people to, Reddit is so powerful because it is supposed to be an authentic community space. You can engage with it just like anything else in a more authentic way as a brand. It just takes a lot more effort, period.
Yeah. And I think one of the things you said in your post was this idea of like keeping an eye on, how would you put it, the publications, blogs, and podcasts that your buyers trust. I mean, it seems to me it's like that's the natural way to do this, right? Like if you're not out to game it and figure out, these loopholes, the natural way is to just get in front of your people the right way. What are some tips for people who want to do it the right way when you have that in mind?
Yeah, and I think what's exciting about this doesn't even answer your question, but I end up going off on tangents. But the thing that I think is great about LLMs is that it's almost giving people more of like permission and buy-in to go for more of the niche sites, even if they're not like the flashy big publications, right? Because those are appearing in citations. So
Right.
even before like the tips to do it, I think it's great to seize that opportunity and say like, I'm sure there's so many PR people who are like, I know that they, our audience listens to that podcast, but it's hard to measure the impact of that? Well, now one way to measure it is to see if it's showing up in citations and LLMs, right? So it's a good opportunity to pivot a little bit of the focus. And in terms of the tips, I mean, a lot of that, another thing that I think LLMs are helping marketing with is breaking down silos, because we're talking about audience research here. Like the core of your question is, how do you find out what your audience, where they are online? And that is like
Right.
the marketing
Should be number one, right?
basics. And yet it gets lost in the day-to-day. It does. It takes time. You know, a lot of us shout out Sparktoro a lot because that's one of the only tools that allows you to do it faster than some of the more manual strategies of like talking to your customers, you know, like things that they really do take. You have to dedicate the time. It is an investment. Especially if you've been in the industry, you already probably have a good sense of it and you're just kind of looking for confirmation. Like, and if you're starting from scratch, if you join a company and you're like, I have no idea what's going on here, then it really is just about immersing yourself, especially with your customers and clients, and literally asking them, like, where do you go for information? What do you trust? You know, I've gone into, just for myself and my consulting business, I'm in a CMO Slack channel that is really phenomenal. I mean, these people share incredible insights with each other. And I've just gone in and been like, where do you guys trust anymore? Because I don't even know like what people are relying on these days. And they'll just give you it. They'll just tell you, you know, and I'm not like, because I'm going to go in there and, you know, spam it. I'm just curious. I want to know where the community, like, I know this is a community that people trust, you know, so it's just literally like getting in there, going into those community spaces, asking people, talking to people, some form of networking, you know, in addition to using tools like Sparktoro to understand, or LLMs. This is the cycle. You can ask an LLM, like, where are the sources people trust? And then you can see everything that they're pulling from, the best of lists they're pulling from, see if those are legit, because some of those are probably paid for. There's a whole cycle here. But yeah, I think a lot of it's manual. And that's what's hard for people.
People don't want to hear that. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, and I think, you know, I like this idea of kind of working backwards from citations that you see, but I do want to make sure listeners kind of understand the kind of differences sometimes, right? And like the technical aspects of it. And I think, can you explain a little bit about the like retrieval layer versus, you know, like the knowledge base?
I can explain the basics. I am not a super I'm not a super technical person. I would say if you're like, I want to dig into the nitty-gritty, go watch Mike King's content.
Yeah.
But on the basic level, and like every LLM operates differently as well. So we're saying LLMs in a general sense, but if you're really trying to optimize for a certain one, that's the other thing. Once you study your audience, who's using LLMs?
Right.
And which one? Probably ChatGPT, but they're seeing AI overviews, but like you might not care what Perplexity's doing if they never use it, right? Just caveat. But every LLM operates differently. Some of them have a higher percentage of using their knowledge, you know, like basically information that was inputted into them. I'm like, I'm like trying to have like, what's the simplest way that I understand it?
Yeah.
That information that they are given from the get-go, and that's facts. Things that you don't need to be searching for, you know, how fast can a cheetah run or something. You don't need to do a Google search every time to confirm that information. But then there's a retrieval aspect, like you're talking about. Retrieval being, it's literally going out and trying to find the pages that are answering your questions, where there's more of like a recency, you know, component, and there's more of a relevancy. And, you know, it's trying to, and that's where we're seeing the developments. Because just like Google's constantly updating its algorithm, LLMs are trying to, you know, figure out what's the best way to find this information. There's a thing called query fan out that we can talk about. You know, you could get really technical with it, but the basics are that you can even see in ChatGPT, if you use ChatGPT, it'll tell you at the top how many searches it ran to get the results that it synthesized into its answer. And that's why a lot of these studies have been able to come out, is that you're actually able to see those inputs of like, what searches did it perform in order to get this information. So that's why SEO, and that my background, I've always been parallel to digital PR because I used to work at Fractl, and they used to do a lot of those link building campaigns. has always cared about like the link side of things and that kind of influence, but everything is evolving right now in a way that I think is going to be really positive though. And the basics of SEO are still important, like ranking in Google, because you have to appear there at all for LLMs to consider you, right? You don't even necessarily have to be in the first couple positions, which is the great thing, but you have to be appearing and you have to be considering a lot of those basics, just to even stand a chance in LLM answers. But those are like the basic differences, but why retrieval is so important and really what a lot of what we're doing is about. How do we give LLMs the fodder it needs in that retrieval process to understand our brands, to make accurate comparisons and provide an answer that we like, right, for our companies. That's really where the strategy comes in, is that narrative.
Yeah. I'm curious how much you've changed your strategy, if at all, in the past, 6 months or a year, like due to all of this. I mean, if we're saying that, like, we both have SEO backgrounds, right? So like we have both kind of links, ranking, whatever, like that's always been like the core deliverable or what we're chasing. But if that's becoming less important in a way, yeah, have you changed? Is it much different?
It's a little different because links still matter. It's, if anything, what I've done and what I encourage everybody to do is, like I said, leverage this opportunity, because I'd say a lot of PR practitioners have always thought brand mentions matter.
Big time.
And
That's
yet,
always been the fight.
right? Exactly. It's always been the fight. And finally, they're winning the fight because of this moment with AI. And so it's not like, oh, I've changed the way I think about marketing. Instead, it's, I have some leeway now to do the things I've always wanted to do, that I've pushed for, but maybe you couldn't measure it well enough. You couldn't, whatever it was, like the roadblocks that have hindered a lot of people in these industries, right? There is an appetite now for, we just want to build that visibility because they see what happens. AI is basically like the big example of, even if you can't, know for sure, and there's tools out there now that help you. But even if you're not 100% sure exactly how you're appearing in every prompt, does that matter?
Right.
It's still happening.
Right.
It's still happening. And people are still seeing your competitor instead of you if you're not putting effort into this. So really, I think for me, the big shift has been like, let's keep telling that story. Let's keep explaining that there are parts of marketing, parts of PR that will never be able to be perfectly measured and yet still critically matter. I mean, I left to do my own thing to focus on brand. Like it's called Brand Authority Club because I was obsessed with this, like, authority and visibility. Like those things are so difficult to measure, and yet that's what it's about. That's what all of this is. And so to me, I was like, all right, this isn't how I expected it to go. This isn't how I thought this story was going to finally come to the forefront, but it has. So I'm just excited about that aspect of everything. And like I was saying, for PRs, it's like, yeah, you have the buy-in for brand mentions now. Like, you have the buy-in to go get those niche things and say, hey, I just used a visibility tool, one of the AI tools out there to show that, or even your own search, if you're like, what's the best, PR mentions tool or whatever, and you see your name there, and then you see what the citation is, and you can say, hey, we did that, we got that placement, so there are still ways to measure it. But I like that there is more, and still not perfect. I mean, marketing's never gonna be that loosey-goosey. But I think that even having a little bit of leeway to experiment more, to do the things that we can't measure perfectly, is going to make a huge difference for brands that are trying to grow sustainably.
Yeah, I would say the brand mention thing. So we do this like state of digital PR, every year, and I'm just wrapping one up. I guess by the time this is live, it will be out already. But it is always it's like digital PR has been way more effective for people, and I think it's all due to that sort of thing. It's this idea that like brand mentions and like, people are coming to digital PR professionals, like potential clients are coming saying they want to get mentioned in AI, like as a KPI now. But I like, and you mentioned a couple pieces of this of like, you can search on ChatGPT and show like this is look at the citation, but I feel like, and maybe this is the point that you were kind of making, it's like it is still muddy. Like I'll talk to different agencies and like everybody measures this stuff way differently,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and so it still feels like we're a little far off, but I guess from your perspective, like if you're talking to clients, what are you telling them their KPIs should be in this AI world?
Yeah, and it is a really nuanced conversation, right? Depending on who you're talking to. Because like I said, for a lot of people, it might not even matter at all. There are many businesses where this does not matter. uh, and I think being a consultant, part of the job is being honest about stuff like that. If like somebody comes to you and they're saying, I'm so excited about AI, we have to do a little bit of research to see, does it make sense to pivot investment over that way? Or are you getting all your business through social, or like,
Mm,
like to have that honest conversation, still thinking about it because that share is going to increase. Right now, it's very small still overall. So there's this balance of, okay, let's start thinking about this. Let's put the fundamentals into place of like, if we're scared of how we're going to eventually appear in LLMs, what do we not have now that's going to hinder that? And a lot of those things are going to be beneficial no matter what. And that's kind of going back to what I was saying of like, how do we get the buy-in for like, hey, a lot of what I do right now is refine brand messaging. Because if you don't have that settled in the way that you want it perfectly on your website, and then on every other third-party site that you have control over, this is the first thing that you should do because you have the control. You don't have control over everything, but it helps increase the chances that your third-party mentions will mention you the way that you want, and it increases the chances that down the line the LLMs are going to mention you the way that you want. But a lot of businesses, again, you're going, and they haven't taken the beat to be like, does our messaging need an update? We had
right.
this new product come out. Like maybe we haven't invested enough time to talk about how that fits in with our overall offer. Like there's a million examples of this, big and small. But we start there because what I tell them is if you really care about LLMs and you want to control that story, we have to get the messaging right. And then we have to update it everywhere that we have the control over. And then we can, build the investment up to like, if they haven't invested in PR at all, then we can build the investment into, let's now go where the people are, where your audience is, because that'll have a benefit outside of LLMs. It's the balancing act because I don't feel that every business needs to go full force, drop what they're doing and say, put all the money into LLMs. There's a lot of things that have dual value. Start there.
Yeah. I mean, are you communicating that stuff in terms of like entity, and cosine, similar, like, all these kind of technical terms where it's like, get you a brand associated with the keywords that you want AI to associate your brand with, right?
Sometimes, right? Like, and again, this is
I mean, like that's the idea
sometimes.
behind it, right?
Yeah,
Like that's
well,
the through line.
it is right. Entities, when you get into like how you're presenting yourself, the messaging, yeah, being tied to an entity, yes. So the people who have, because I work with all size companies, I've worked with like solopreneurs, up to enterprise. And so the conversation depends on who you're talking to because a
Yeah, yeah,
solopreneur
yeah.
doesn't care about entities. They just are like, what do I need
Right.
to do, to show up? And then so the conversation's much different. But yes, to your question, for the people who are more SEO savvy and want to get into more of the technical stuff, like we'll have those conversations about entities and we'll experiment with like, okay, how are you? And the best thing is just look at how you're doing right now. Even on a non-technical level, I'd like to show them like, hey, I used Reddit's AI to see what your reputation is over there. You can take 1 second and type in, what is the sentiment of my brand? Type in your brand, and Reddit's consolidating every comment made, and you'll see very quickly what needs to be adjusted in terms of your messaging and the way that your brand's coming across, right?
Is that a tool Reddit has,
Yeah,
like a
Reddit
thing?
has, they have, in beta, I think mid last year.
Really?
So if you
I don't think I
go,
knew that.
oh yeah, it's fun. It's just, like I said, it just summarizes rather than like you having to manually do everything,
Yeah.
which I still do because, it's nice to see that. But if you go to Reddit, where did it go? Is it still on the sidebar? Forgot what it's called. Is it called Discover? Hold on, I will find this. But yes, people don't really talk about it. It's interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, for all the talk of Reddit, being such a big part of these LLMs, yeah, it still seems like a big
Oh, I think it's called
piece
Reddit
that
Answers.
Reddit
Yes,
answers. Okay.
Reddit Answers. If you Google Reddit Answers, it'll come up, and then it's basically functioning as its own internal
Well,
LLM of being like, yeah, retrieval of, okay, let's gather everything. And so that's what I'm like, you want to spend, I try to help people do this kind of work in like 5 minutes to just get them excited about it. And that's one of the things you can do. You want to see how everybody on Reddit is thinking about you? Just spend 1 second, type it in, and see. In some cases,
yeah,
it might
that's
be great.
fantastic.
In other cases, you're going to see your weaknesses very quickly. And again, it's not all in our control because sometimes it's like the customer service sucks or the product is
Right.
terrible.
Right.
There's, we can do what we can, but it's still good to know where you're at. And then same thing with LLMs, search all the whatever you think your audience would be searching for. The classics are like best blank, whether it's a tool, site, product, whatever, comparing you to your competitors and seeing what they're pulling, what their answers are. Like you need to get a pulse check of where you're at. And that's when people get really into AI, when they see like, oh, I don't like how that's looking. But the good thing is that's indicative of like other things. It helps signal other problems that need to be fixed outside of just how you're appearing in AI. If you don't like how you're appearing there, something is off in either your site or the third-party signals, and that's what PR could be great for.
Yeah, that's a great point. And to kind of bring this full circle, I mean, thinking about the sources, right, that we're tracking, like bringing it back to your article, LLM sources kind of shifting. I feel like we've spent this whole talk kind of on like why you shouldn't follow some of these big data trends because they're so volatile, right? Like to inform your strategy based on these trends that we're seeing. When should we tune in? When is it important when we see Reddit is the top, or Wikipedia is the top source in these LLM citations?
Yeah, it's a great question because, again, it's a balance, right? It's like it's not neglect it and, not look at it at all, but it's not panic and change your whole strategy to adjust to what is more there than something else on any given day, right? It's in the middle. And the middle is do those searches and see what is showing up. There's a really good article coming out on Backlinko. Maybe it'll be out by the time this goes live about they're coining Citation Core, which is basically this exercise of how are you going through and seeing for your niche the sites that are appearing a lot. Because there are studies out that are like, these are the sites that LLMs ChatGPT mentions the
And
most.
like how
And it's
helpful
like,
is that? Yeah.
you're right. It's like, great, USA Today, like whatever, like things that you're probably not going to get into. But you could do that exercise yourself. And it's basically this process of either you use a tool, like a third-party tool, or you manually will type in these searches and just get a sense of what's showing up over and over again. Even the type of content, right? Like video is becoming a much bigger aspect of Gemini, right? So you're just you're keeping an eye on the broader trends, but really you're just like, this site has a bunch of blog posts that keep getting mentioned in this topic area. Maybe we should do a guest post for them. Like that's what we're talking about here. It's just more research from the audience research perspective rather than like oh my God, like this one site I thought mattered isn't on here, so maybe I have to scrap the whole thing. It's more, maybe there's something you've never even, it hasn't been on your radar and you see it. It's another input, but it's an important one. It's a ton of fodder for our own
for articles.
We still gotta have our level of human critical thinking on top of all this is the thing,
Right.
It's like you decide based on what you're seeing if it's worth it or not.
Yeah, seriously. Your own little gauge for sure. The last thing I like to ask people is, are there things that I didn't ask you that you wish, we would have talked about, like that you think listeners should know about this kind of whole topic? I know we've kind of been all over the place, but
like I said, this is how if anything, it's just to reinforce the opportunity I see here for PR folks. I think that social and PR got the biggest boon from this transition, or that they will, because there's so much more validation of not only is this great for your own channel, it impacts all discovery. And there's this bigger conversation about brand visibility and brand discovery outside of just, like I said, if I'm an SEO, we can't be in a silo anymore. And if we are, we're not doing our jobs well enough, because it's not enough for us to be like optimizing for the search algorithms. We have to appear in these other places to get into LLMs, but also because people aren't searching the same way they used to. They just, this is going back. I feel like these data points just got lost because everything else is happening. But like TikTok and YouTube being huge search engines is also happening still, right? So to be like, where's your audience? That's still the number one question. Throw it all away aside from that question, and that will align you. If you're like, I have no idea where to start, that's where you start. You see where your audience is. But that change in just how people are searching, if they see you on social, then they do a Google search, and then maybe they ask an LLM to compare you to a bunch of other things, and they go back to Google, then they go to Reddit to confirm that what they're doing is the right decision. You got to be in all those places then. So
your
channel,
multimodal searches or whatever, right?
This is an opportunity for all of us to be like, all of this matters. Let's just invest in where our audience is and do it. Like, let's do it. So in that way, I know it's been very tumultuous. I have felt it too. It is scary, but let's lean into the benefits and like the opportunities. And for me, that's been like my biggest thing is like, how do I keep telling that story? Because that's where I want us to get to that place of, even if you can't measure it perfectly, this stuff still matters.
Right. Love it. Amanda, this has been great. Where can people connect with you, find out more about your consultancy and your writing?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm chronically on LinkedIn, unfortunately. So you can find me there. Brandauthority.club. I haven't launched this yet, but we're going to be doing monthly meetups where we cap it probably at like 20 people and talk through some of this stuff. Because to me, I think that when you're operating, I work for myself and I see what my clients are up to. But aside from that, it's tough to know how everybody in the industry is feeling. LinkedIn is not reality. So, if you're interested in the kind of things I'm talking about, just sign up for the email list at brandauthority.club and you'll get all the updates on.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'll put all these links in the show notes. I know we touched on a lot of different stuff. Yeah, I think that's it. Amanda, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Listeners, watchers, reminder to subscribe. If you have any questions about this stuff, leave it in the comments and I'll make sure Amanda gets back to you and, helps you along your journey and keeps you sane amongst all this tumultuous.
We're all doing our best. Yeah, we're all doing our best.
Hang in there, everybody. We got this. All right. It's all good. That's your takeaway from this.
Yeah, let's leave on that note. That's a good note. Thank you, Vince. This was fun.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. Take care.